and welcome to the first Review Day Tuesday of 2016. I have 5 comic books and a book to talk about today. So let's get started! Mother Russia! This one is by Jeff McComsey. Cover art by Laura Mueller. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. It has the umlauts above the U. Mother Russia is a post-apocalyptic story that takes place shortly after World War II. It's like 1947 whenever the story starts. It takes place in Russia and follows the adventures of a woman who is a sniper, and she's been sniping zombies until she finds a little itty infant boy that's actually alive. And she rescues him and shenanigans ensues. Also, there's the introduction of a new character that's like an eye-patched man, and he looks amazing, and he has a German Shepherd. I would recommend this. I mean, the interior art does not look like the cover art at all. In fact, some of the interior art can be goofy in a couple of places, I'm not gonna lie. Like, here's just an example of some of the goofiness that I'm talking about. I mean, look at that kid's face. It's still an enjoyable read, and I enjoyed reading it, and I'm definitely gonna pick up issue 2. I'm hoping that the art improves a little bit in the next issue. I have a feeling that it does. Epic Earth Adventures! Dun dun dun! This one I picked up when I went to Youngstown Indie Comics Expo last year in September 2015. It was the first year that the convention ever ran, and I met a bunch of really cool people while I was there, including the artist of this series, Nate. He is an awesome person. I enjoyed talking with him. I read this comic. The interior art is in black and white, kind of like Mother Russia, but Mother Russia has some tones to it. This is just straight up black and white artwork. Like, there's no gray tones to it. It's just black and white, and it looks amazing. I love the art direction of this thing. Okay, so the story. It is about a scientific adventurer that travels through time and goes on little mission. And in this adventure, he is retrieving a probe from the organization that he works for. The only thing is that there's lots of prehistoric dinosaurs and things that try to eat him. Of course, the prehistoric part of me really likes this because I am a sucker for dinosaurs. If you don't know why, you should check out Johnson & Sir, link in the description. I have really mixed feelings about this though, because I love the artwork. I love how it's illustrated. The thing that bothers me about it is that it'll build up the story to a point where something happens to the main character, and then all of a sudden it just cuts to a different scene. And I'm not talking like a different scene, I mean like it's almost like a commercial break in the middle of a comic. It's the weirdest thing. Like, one of them is this, Churchill's Other Body, The Technique. And I'm just like, okay, this is a weird diversion. This could be interesting in and of itself. Why is it in the middle of this comic story that has nothing to do with it? And there's like 3 stories like that in this book. Just put in the middle of the action to break it up like a really obnoxious commercial break. I'm not overly a fan of it. I don't know if there were previous old comics that used to do this kind of thing. I get the kind of idea that maybe there were comics that did this back in the day, but there's kind of a reason that they stopped doing that. I still enjoyed it, and I really appreciate the ideas that are present inside of this book. So overall, I would say it's worth a read, especially if you're a big fan of mad science and prehistoric monsters and things like that. A sort of kind of love story, maybe. So this one I got at Youngstown Indie Comics Expo. It was actually created by the guy who organized the event. And this isn't a comic per se. It's more like an illustrated novel, or really just a zine. I'm totally cool with zines, by the way. I love zines. It's really cool to flip through them and see the like personal stories of the people who make them, because zines are almost like autobiographies with scribbles in them. So this story is about a person who gets into a romantic love affair with somebody who really he shouldn't have an affair with. Because the guy is a recovering alcoholic and is addicted to drugs and is trying to run away from problems at home, and it's generally like, no, all the red flags are going up with this guy. Why are you dating him? Why? Speaking of red flags, that actually reminds me of a previous comic that I had read before called Between the Sheets. Oh my god, I will make a video ranting about that book because, oh my god, I hate that comic! I will say, what makes this comic more enjoyable than Between the Sheets is that the main characters in a sort of kind of love story, maybe, at least they love each other. It's a love that is doomed at the start, and you know they shouldn't have these feelings for each other, but at least it's a passion, and they have it for each other, and it's there. Oh, Between the Sheets, you make me so mad. Part of the reason that I think of Between the Sheets whenever I read a sort of kind of love story maybe is because it deals with a lot of falling in love with a person even though there's like a bunch of red flags and you really shouldn't date that person. There's like a ton of differences between the stories. One of the bigger ones is that Between the Sheets is love story. I use that loosely. I'll bitch about that in another video. But it's a story about a woman that falls in love with her girl best friend. This one's about a guy that falls in love with a stranger. It's a same-sex love story, but again, the characters in this one love each other. They shouldn't, but they do. As far as like a tragedy goes, this is actually like a really good story. And the artwork, I mean, I can tell that the guy hasn't had a whole ton of formal artistic training, but he's really good at what he does. This layout right here, that is just so psychedelic and really cool to look at. I enjoy it. If you can get this, go ahead and get it. I'll put the website for Youngstown Indie Comics Expo in the description below, and by extension, that should lead you to the guy who created this because he ran the show. Plutona! The premise of this one is that there are a bunch of kids leading their everyday lives. Superheroes are a thing in this world. In fact, one of the kids is a cape spotter, somebody who tracks down superhero sightings and journals about them and puts them up on LiveJournal and blah, 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 blah. Basically what happens in this story, and I'm not sure if this is necessarily a spoiler, but spoilers! There is a cape, meaning a superhero, that at the end of this story is dead. At the end of the first issue is dead. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next, but I really want to pick up issue 2 to find out what does happen next. The artwork is lovely. I love the panoramas and the stills that just take their time, like this shot here. I love this. Nothing's going on, but it's so atmospheric and I love it. I love how the characters are rendered. It's so cute. Although I'm not entirely sure how realistic, I hate using that term when it comes to conversations, but realistic the conversations are in this book. I've not hung out with a bunch of middle schoolers. I'm not sure how they talk nowadays. But, you know, as far as kids hanging out and talking with each other goes, it's accurate. It's still a good read though, even if I'm an out of touch old Irish person. Ooh, one of my favorite comics in this lineup, Rogues. The story opens with an emperor saying to his harem, "You are all dismissed because my favorite woman of the harem has given birth to a son. I don't need you anymore, even though one of you in particular was my favorite. I hope that you're not offended." And she's like, "Oh, of course not." And she's totally the villain because she's like, "How dare you shove me off like that after all the shit that I went through for you?" What she does is she puts together a little band of assassins and she's going to assassinate the woman and the baby. You know, not that unique. But what happens after that is that there's like an advisor type person who takes this baby and goes into town and drops it off with an assassin for hire and a thief and wanders off and just leaves the baby with them. It's pretty hilarious. At some point, there's a fight that goes on between some of the hired assassins and the thief and the hired man. And they're holding the baby and they're like, I need to fight these bad guys, but I'm holding the baby. What am I supposed to do? And so they just start tossing the baby back and forth during the battle. They're like, here, catch it. What? What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know. I need both hands to swing my sword. And it's the silliest battle scene that I have seen illustrated in a comic in a long time. Also, spoilers! It has one of the more interesting ways to introduce a trans character. I'm still not 100% sure how to feel about it, but it goes kind of like this. One of the assassins manages to corner the higher muscle man, and he's like, my hands are full, I'm holding the baby, I can't swing my axe because it's a two-handed axe. Oh, my foot's in their way. And so he just lifts up his foot and kicks the woman in the crotch. And she's like, my balls! And he's like, your balls? And the woman is like, your balls? Not a big deal. Tell us who sent you or I'll kick you in the balls next. Good job, I think. I'm not sure. I just appreciate the fact that they just kind of rolled with it. It's an improvement. It's certainly better than what they did in Saga and what's his name that put a wig on a robot. Overall, I would say Rogues is worth a read. I'm definitely gonna pick up issue 2 and see how it goes. I'm really hoping that they don't stick on the topic of the woman and her anatomy, though. I really hope they don't do that. I hope that that's just the one time that they reference it and then they move on. All right, last one. This took me the longest to read through. The Shining. Oh, man. Part of the reason that I read this was because I had never read a Stephen King book before, and I like the Stanley Kubrick movie. And then I saw Nostalgia Critic review the miniseries adaptation of the book, and I noticed how different it was in characterization and everything else from the movie. So I was like, I wonder if the miniseries is more based on the book than what the movie was. And when I looked into it, I found out that Stephen King had written a screenplay for the original Shining movie, but Kubrick rejected it and hired a different writer to write the screenplay for it. After that kerfuffle, and then Stephen King saw the movie, he was like, I hate this movie. I hate what you did to the characters, and I hate what you did to Jack. So he decided to make a miniseries adaptation of it instead. However, I wanted to read the book to see what the book was like before I saw the miniseries or watched the movie again. I've not read any of Stephen King's books before. This is my first ever Stephen King novel that I've read through from beginning to end. I've read some of his short stories, which I thought they were okay, but I will say, worth the read. I love the symbols that are throughout this thing. I'm not gonna argue about like the symbolism of the ghosts, because to me that's not where the real meat of the symbolism is. It's more in comparing the hotel to a wasp nest and the shine that Danny and Halloran have to a torch that burns the wasp nest down. Oh my god, yes. Also, I love the characterizations that are in this book because they are so much better than the Kubrick movie. Jack Nicholson, I love you. You're a great actor, and I love you in other movies like Something's Gotta Give. But, oh, man, Jack Torrance as a character in the novel is amazing, and the development of how he goes from struggling to absolute madness, for lack of a better word, is amazing. And I kind of want to take some of that inspiration and influence and put it into one of my own comics at some point. This is how good this is. It's inspiring me to be a better writer. Yes, it's that good. Love how this ends because, no, this isn't a spoiler. I will go ahead and give this to you for free. Halloran doesn't die at the end. Thank fuck. Because I am tired of the trope of the black man dying at the end of the horror film or the horror book. And he doesn't die in the book, and that makes me so happy. So happy. Oh, it's a great book, and I would definitely recommend that you give this a read. There were a couple of times that I read this right before bed, and I had the weirdest nightmares. But I don't regret it. All right, so those were the books that I reviewed for this week. There's a bunch more that I gotta read, but if you have any recommendations, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Not in my pants. I'm pointing at my pants, but I mean the comments. Thank you for watching. You are awesome.